Time to build a gaming PC. PC part picker is where you can shop for all your parts and pick them up very easily. And it's very simple. When it comes to building your own computer, it's surprisingly easy, and you still get all the benefits of getting the exact PC you want. Get yourself a decent sized workplace and a Phillips screwdriver, and we're good to go. Let's crack open our CPU. Inside you should find the processor itself along with the heatsink and fan. This is essentially the heart of the build and is fairly fragile. This AMD chip has lots of delicate pins on the back which you want to be careful with. If any of these get bent, you're in trouble. Pull the lever by the socket back and you'll find the tiny gold triangle on the corner of the CPU. This matches the corresponding triangle on the socket, so gently set the processor down and pull the lever back and lock it into place. Now grab the memory. This is super easy to install. You'll see a notch about 2/3 down. This is what you'll want to line up on the slot on the motherboard and firmly press it into place until it clicks. That's all there is to it. If you look at the bottom of the heatsink, you'll see a thin layer of thermal paste. This is fine to use for this build, but try not to touch it before applying. Now it's time to install the heatsink. Set it down square on the processor, and for the AMD there's a latch to press down that locks everything in place. Grab the 4-pin fan connector and connect it to the CPU power on the motherboard, and that's it. The CPU is installed and we're ready to move on. Unscrew the side panel and pop it off so we have some room to work. Now it's time to grab the case and drop the motherboard on the brass standoffs we installed earlier. Just make sure all the ports are properly lined up with the I/O shield around the back. Grab the small screws out of the back hardware that came with the cases and screw the board into place, starting at the corners and making sure you tighten the board down nicely. Grab your screwdriver and remove the 2 PCIe slots in the back of the case to make room for the graphics card. This is a fairly small card, but they're typically pretty similar. You'll find the video outputs on the rear and the PCIe connector on the bottom, which connects into the motherboard. Slide it into the top slot on the board until it clicks into place, then screw it in to keep things secure. Now to install the power supply. Mount the power supply into the power supply slot and screw the 4 screws that comes with the box. Now grab the long 20+4-pin cable and plug it into the corresponding connector on the board. Next you should find the 4-pin CPU connector from the power supply. Hook it up to the motherboard on the top left. First up, grab the cable running from the rear fan and plug it into the system fan header onto the motherboard, the drive. Next, there's a SATA data cable that came with the motherboard. You'll see it has a notch on one end, so it goes only one way. Hook one end to the cable to the motherboard SATA port, and the other into the SSD. It's as simple as that. Going back to the connect 2 cables into the adapter and plug it into the 6-pin on the graphics card, and it's powered and ready to go. Cables inside, you should see a AC97 and HD audio connector. Grab the HD7 audio and plug it into the matching plug on the board. You'll also see a USB cable for the front ports on the case. It's the same story here as before. It only goes in one way thanks to our knocked out pin. Along the bottom, you'll also find the front panel connectors. These are a bit fiddly, but they're marked on the board as well as the menu. Just plug these in individually, making note of which side is positive and which is negative. It's easy to mix up, so if you have any problems turning on the PC later, this is a great place to double check. Plug in the CD drive into the drive box. Now let's install our hard drive. Since this is smaller than a normal hard drive, you'll want to mount it to the bottom of the case instead of using one of the drive cases, but you've got plenty of room to install multiple drives in this case. While we're here, let's power the hard drive, which has two connectors on the end. Grab SATA cable from the power supply and hook it up to the larger of the two ports on the bottom corner. You'll find two of the 4 SATA ports to connect the hard drives and SSDs. As long as everything looks good, you can turn it off and clean up what cables you can, and you'll be ready to throw a copy of whatever operating system you like on it. Congrats, you built yourself a gaming PC.